Dillian Whyte stops Brian Minto in the 3rd round. Minto took a knee and failed to get up before the count of 10. This was a sloppy performance by Dillian Whyte. And for anyone that's a Dillian Whyte fan, there were some worrying signs right here against Brian Minto. Now, we have to put things in perspective. Brian Minto is like 5'11". So he's totally different in terms of his stature than Anthony Joshua. So whereby Dillian Whyte was cranking and loading up and throwing very big shots, trying to get Minto out of there as quickly as possible, he left himself open, because Whyte is 6'4". He left himself open to shots from a much shorter opponent punching up. That he could see the gaps very easily, the way Whyte was cranking and loading up with his shots. Anthony Joshua will be looking down at Dillian Whyte. He's a couple inches taller than Whyte. So he may not be able to see the gaps as well as easy as Brian Minto did. And I'm sure Dillian Whyte is going to be much more careful and cautious against Joshua. And his defense is going to be a lot tighter. Whether it will be tight enough to withstand Anthony Joshua's onslaught remains to be seen. But I'm sure his defense will be a lot tighter than it was against Minto. But nonetheless, he got caught with a lot of shots against Brian Minto. He had no respect for his power, and he was just cranking and just loading up, trying to get the guy out of there as quickly as possible. Now, his defensive lapses were worrying because of the fact that maybe he was anxious to impress the crowd and get Minto out of there and score a spectacular knockout. And that's not good to see. You want to see composure from Dillian Whyte. It's not just about physical preparation, it's about mental preparation for the Joshua fight. You want to see some composure from Dillian Whyte. We didn't see composure in there. We saw a guy who was over anxious, trying to get a highlight reel knockout and upstage Anthony Joshua, his rival. And the most concerning thing wasn't anything that happened during the fight. And give credit where it's due. Dillian Whyte did stop Brian Minto, who is a tough guy. Although Brian Minto took the fight on short notice, he is a tough guy. He did go 7 rounds with Joseph Parker fairly recently. So Whyte has to get credit for being able to take him out much quicker than Joseph Parker was able to. But the most disturbing thing was what Dillian Whyte said in a post-fight interview. He said that he's got a shoulder injury. Now, that's concerning on 2 levels. First of all, it's concerning because his primary weapon, in my opinion, against Anthony Joshua will be his jab. And he's got a very good jab. He's got very long arms. I suspect his arms are actually quite a bit longer than Joshua's arms. And if you go back and look at their amateur fight, yes, a lot has changed since the amateur days. Whyte has improved and Joshua has certainly improved massively since their amateur fight. But one thing that has not changed is the fact that Whyte has got those long arms, longer arms than Joshua. And therefore, with that jab he has, I think it would be a potent weapon for him against Joshua in their fight in December, assuming it goes ahead, because as I say, Whyte does have this apparent shoulder injury in his left shoulder. Is Whyte really ready for this fight? Why would he come out and talk about a shoulder injury? He says he's not going to pull out. He's going to fight in December, come whatever. But why would he mention it? Why would he mention the fact that he's got a weakness there? That's only going to give Anthony Joshua courage. That's only going to, give him encouragement and think, okay, I'm going to go in there against an injured fighter. Or maybe he's not injured. Maybe it was a ploy by Dillian Whyte. But personally, I doubt it. I don't think Dillian Whyte is that sneaky of a character in the world of boxing. I think he's a very straight talking guy and says what he feels and says what he thinks. And I think he probably does have a shoulder injury. And he says that's the reason he wasn't using his jab. And that's the reason he wasn't using his left hook as often as we've seen him in recent fights. So he's carrying a shoulder injury into the Joshua fight. The fight's going to be December 12th. So we're talking about, I believe is it December 12th or December? I can't remember now. I think it's December 12th. But it's 3 months away, basically. His training camp is most likely going to be 2 months at least. So he's got a month really to try and recover from this shoulder injury and then go into training camp. So can it be done? Will it need an operation? Will it need some special kind of therapy or something? I don't know. But as I say, given the fact that his jab will be his most effective weapon against Joshua, that is a very, very serious problem. If he don't have his jab against Joshua and he's got an injured left shoulder, he can forget about winning the fight. He can forget about even being competitive in the fight. Because me personally, I have in my head a game plan which I think Dillian Whyte should employ, which would give him the best chance of beating Anthony Joshua. And that would be to keep a very tight defense early in the fight and box conservatively. Don't try and throw too many punches. Just minimize the mistakes and aim to land the jab to Anthony Joshua's head. Not to the body, but to Anthony Joshua's head. And only go to the body once he gets inside. And just box a very conservative fight early on in the fight, because we know Joshua starts fast. So my plan would be for Dillian to just keep his hands up, keep everything nice and tight, and whenever he gets the opportunity, bang Joshua in the mouth with that left jab and just apply steady pressure, touch him here and there with a jab. If he sees an opportunity for the right hand, go for it. But the main thing is Joshua is going to start much sharper and faster than Dillian Whyte. He's better coordinated. He's a better athlete than Dillian Whyte. And his trainer, Jonathan Banks, has to know that and prepare Dillian Whyte for that, to survive the early onslaught from Joshua. If he could survive the early onslaught and just touch Joshua with jabs and keep that defense tight and don't take anything too clean, then I think as the fight goes on, if Dillian Whyte manages to survive, I think he'll start giving Joshua more and more problems as the fight wears on. Okay, that's the ideal scenario from a Dillian Whyte strategy point of view, in my opinion. But with this shoulder injury and not really having a great performance against Brian Minto in terms of the fact that he was getting hit a lot, is he really ready? Is this a bit too soon for Dillian Whyte? Some people are saying it, and maybe they're correct. I guess we'll find out on December 12th. He's definitely got the aggression, Dillian Whyte, and he's a fighter at the end of the day. This guy's been in there sparring Vladimir Klitschko, Vitaly Klitschko, David Haye, David Price, Tyson Fury. I mean, this guy sparred a lot of people. And all of the people who have sparred Dillian Whyte say the same thing. The guy's got a lot of heart. He's strong. He's tough. This is what they say about him. But, so, you know, he's not going to be intimidated by Joshua. But to give himself the best chance of winning or even being competitive, he's going to need to be healthy. And he's going to need to stick to, in my opinion, a disciplined game plan early on. And as the fight progresses, then start putting it on Joshua. Because Dillian Whyte, unlike Joshua, is not a muscle-bound fighter. He's a very big man, but he has striated muscles, okay, elongated muscles. And he'll probably, you know, he probably has the kind of muscles that maybe won't fill up with lactic acid as badly as Anthony Joshua's will late in the fight. Although that remains to be seen, because there are some muscle, you know, very muscular heavyweights over the years who have tremendous stamina. I mean, even now you got a guy like Carlos Takam who's very heavily muscled, but got great stamina and a great engine. So there are some exceptions. Even Evander Holyfield, when he was up in the high teens in terms of 218, 217, he was quite heavily muscled and he still had good stamina with it. So there are heavyweights out there. Ike Ibuchi is another one. He was very heavily muscled, but he had good stamina. So Joshua may turn out to be one of those guys, but on the other hand, he may turn out to be a Frank Bruno, perhaps, where his muscles get very, very tired, and in the second half of the fight, particularly if it's a tough fight, he might start to slow down. It all remains to be seen. But as I said, this performance by Dillian Whyte, concerning from Dillian Whyte's perspective, got hit too much. And the shoulder injury, that's another big concern, because I think his jab is going to be the key punch against Anthony Joshua. As well as his body shots, yes, but that's when he gets inside. From the outside, tight defense, stick the jab in Joshua's mouth and just apply slow, steady pressure. Because if they're both jabbing at the same time and Dillian Whyte has learned to throw the jab the way he's supposed to be throwing it, Whyte's is going to land first. It certainly did in their amateur fight. Again, I know a lot has changed and whatever, but Whyte has still got those longer arms than Joshua. So if he's throwing that jab correctly and timing it correctly, he should be able to land it better. So again, there's a lot of ifs there. I'm still intrigued to see the fight, but based on this performance, it didn't look good for Dillian Whyte. Drop your comments below and let me know how you felt about this performance. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.